take that one. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us at the Heritage Foundation. Walid, it sounds like we have an audience that's actually alive. They're talking to one another for a change. I'm John Hilbolt, Director of Lectures and Seminars. It's my privilege to welcome you to our Lehrman Auditorium, and again to welcome my good friend Walid Phares back to Heritage. We, of course, welcome those who join us on each occasion on the heritage.org website. We remind our internet viewers that questions can be submitted throughout the program, addressed simply to speaker@heritage.org via email. And for those in-house, please check that your cell phones and other personal electronic device noisemakers, whatever you wish to call them, are turned off to avoid any electronic interference with our own production. We would appreciate it. And again, the program will be posted within 24 hours on the Heritage website should you wish to review it for future reference. Again, it is my pleasure today and privilege to welcome back to Heritage Dr. Walid Phares. He is a senior fellow and director of the Future Terrorism Project at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies. He is also a visiting scholar at the European Foundation for Democracies and teaches at the National Defense University. He is also a terrorism expert at Fox News. Dr. Phares holds degrees in law and political science from St. Joseph University and the Lebanese University in Beirut, a master's degree in international law from the Université de Lyon in France, and a PhD in international relations and strategic studies from the University of Miami. In the 1980s, he taught political sociology at St. Joseph University and practiced law in Beirut. He has lived in the United States since 1990, where he has taught at several universities, including Florida International University, the University of Miami, and Florida Atlantic University. He has lectured worldwide on Islamic fundamentalism, jihadist movements and strategies, Arab nationalism, human rights under Islamic regimes, the Arab-Israeli conflict, and the status of Christians and other Middle Eastern minorities. He has authored 9 books on the Middle East, the most recent of which, Confrontation, Winning the War Against Future Jihad, we are so pleased to be featuring today. Walid, welcome back to Heritage.
Thank you very much, John, and I'd like to thank the Heritage Foundation and John for inviting me for the third time in 3 years to present a third book. I'm not sure that next year we're going to continue the business on an annual basis, but you may see me. Yeah, you may see me before the end of the decade one more time, probably. I'd like to thank also my agent, Lynn Rabinoff, the Palgrave Institution, my publisher, and obviously I would like to thank my Foundation for Defense of Democracies, which has been hosting me over the past few years, and under which auspices I've been writing those books. I'd like to thank the European Foundation for Democracy in Brussels that opened for me the path to interact with many European legislators, intellectual think tanks, and individuals. And of course, I'd like to thank my family that has been very patient with me during these years. And just to mention that this book I have dedicated in the memory of my mother who passed away on December 17th last year. This book is the last of a trilogy. The first book, which I introduced at Heritage 2005, Future Jihad, Terror Strategies Against the West. The first version was Against America. The paperback was Against the West, 2006. Was an attempt to explain better what we have coined in America and in some other places, but not all the places around the world, as war on terror, but focusing more so on the historical evolution of what I've defined as the global jihadist movement, which includes a variety of currents, a number of regimes, past and present, possibly future, and organizations, individuals, and all sorts of other entities. I've tried in Future Jihad to talk about, analyze the global strategies of these movements. That alone is an argument telling that we are not dealing with a mere reaction to foreign policies. Of course, foreign policies bring about policies, reactions. But the global ideological movement, which I have defined, and many others have done so, and the jihadists themselves have done so, as the global jihadist movement has a doctrine, has a world vision. It can adapt to, it has adapted to changes in international relations. It was born in the 1920s. That was before the League of Nations, the United Nations, the Arab-Israeli conflict, before we had a policy in the Middle East, i.e. the United States, for the Cold War, and of course throughout the Cold War, after the Cold War, in the 90s, all the way to 9/11 and beyond. A movement like that, that sophisticated, that wide, that global, cannot be defined as a mere reaction to some U.S. foreign policy or the daughter of the Arab-Israeli conflict or frustration because of economic disenfranchisement. It is all of the above in terms of strategic use, but it is sui generis, as we say in Latin. It is born of a vision. It just happened that that vision was successful in recruiting and indoctrinating and creating one of the largest pools of militant ideologies in the 20th and probably now in the 21st century. In that first book, I also tried to project the future of these movements worldwide and what are their wishes, both strategic, ideological, political. Many questions rose from that first book. Readers, people with whom I've interacted, asked the next set of crucial questions. How come you're telling us that there is a global movement that has been able to outmaneuver so many other forces around the world, from the Marxist-Leninists to the liberal democracies to conservative, both in the West and in the East, and they're still surviving, and yet our academic/intellectual elite wasn't able to pin down the existence, yet the strategies and the vision of that movement? Well, I responded with my second book of the trilogy, The War of Ideas, in which I argued that, well, that was one of their successes. The jihadi movements worldwide were very successful in waging three wars of ideas, actually. The first one, and I'm going to go quickly here, from 45 to 1990, was basically to be able to penetrate the Arab and Muslim world, to expand under different branches or schools. I call them the two trees of jihadism. The Salafi tree, which is the largest, under which you can identify the Wahhabi, the Muslim Brotherhood, the Deobandi, others. Then moving into a second generation of Neo-Wahhabi, Neo-Muslim Brotherhood, and all the others. It is a worldwide network which has been able to penetrate the Arab and Muslim world over decades, specifically and more with strength during the Cold War, when, of course, the rest of the international community, the US-led NATO and the USSR-led Warsaw Pact, were at odds, were fighting, in a Cold War, certainly, in some cases low-intensity conflicts. At that time, during that half a century almost, the jihadist networks, both the Salafist and, of course, the smaller tree, the Khomeinist version of jihadism, have been making tremendous progress. This is why when we in America, after 9/11, and there in Europe, after all their 11s, 3/11s, and 7/7s, and so on and so forth, and of course, beyond that in Asia, were surprised to see the size of the pools of jihadists. And then we had all these reactions emanating from our thinking, from campuses to think tanks to government, dispersing our arguments into, well, this is because of, as I said before, all these reactions too. Very few have been able to determine that we are reacting to, more so than the jihadists are reacting to, because throughout the 90s, as I have and many of my colleagues have demonstrated, the jihadist movement, at least of that second generation Salafi Al-Qaeda, has been pounding, not just in the areas of where the jihadists were active, in the Middle East, in Asia, Russia, but also in the United States, all these